doing?
Well, it's recording, and I did it with a video call again. I don't know. It lost, the internet connection went totally out on my end.
Okay. It's 8 o'clock on your clock and 3 o'clock on my clock. So we're starting at right at the hour.
Yeah, I blew the candles out when I took my image off.
Well, can you light them up right there? I can start talking. We can just say our good morning.
Yeah, just go ahead. Just go ahead, Aristo. This is take 2.
Okay.
Just go ahead and try to recap where you were going before.
Okay. Well, that's a good thing because I don't have to repeat all that stuff and we can just get to the beef. Good morning, Ron. Good morning, Aristo. We started right at the hour. Hopefully this is going to be a lot smoother than the previous take. But what I was going to say basically is that I've been thinking about a lot of things. It's an intense situation all over the world. People obviously are on edge and have been on edge for several years. In the Western world, especially in the third world, it's hell as usual. But there is good news to this, and there is challenging news. I wouldn't say that there's any bad news, to the situation. Now, let me just get into a little bit of astrological jargon to say that someone on Ron's Facebook page mentioned that it's going to be very intense this month, and Ron said, well, it's been intensifying since 2011. So the whole ninth wave thing, as we had said before, is just that. The underworlds are coming up. Earth and sky have been plugged in. The current is moving through, and this is like putting Drano through a clogged drain. You're going to have crap coming up. This is the crap, however, that's, let me say it differently. SpaceTime self-organizes because we are self-organizing entities. Speaking of SpaceTime, we essentially speak of our perception of SpaceTime. So we tend to organize our reality so it makes sense for us collectively and individually. As such, when something comes up from the underworlds, it's not going to be some demon from hell popping out of a hole in the ground. It's going to be a structure of events that have an established continuity with our history and all the previous structures of events. Plus, it will be a structure of events that seems to be going somewhere for better or worse. So we structure our perception, no matter what the nature of space-time really is, apart from us, even though it isn't anything apart from us, we structure it to make sense and create a timeline perception, to create a perception that, well, it's business as usual, because that ensures our survival and because it is the nature of manifestation to be sustaining, preserving, and stabilizing as well as evolving. Now, that brings me to the astrological thing, because at this point, first of all, we're entering on April 20th, the first of 4 lunar eclipses. This is called a tetrad. A lunar eclipse is a hyperactivation of the planetary energy field in a way that affects the human subconscious. It brings up more from our human subconscious and does not allow us to hide from ourselves, and it doesn't allow the collective to hide because things that would have been invisible are now dimly lit. As you can see during a lunar eclipse, the moon essentially turns red. It doesn't go black. So it has this ominous color because it reaches these low frequencies, and the low frequencies are brought out, so to speak. Low does not mean bad. Low frequency essentially means denser, more manifest, and these are the carrier waves of higher frequencies. There can be no higher frequencies in manifestation in any coherence. They will damage manifestation unless there are integral low frequencies. What does that mean in historical terms? That means a higher frequency may be something more mentally oriented, more spiritual, more whatever, but if there is no solid low frequency that's healed and integrated, then the higher frequency will fragment and go like shards all over the place and will act like X-rays and gamma rays act on the body. Gamma rays are high frequency light, and they will tear up your DNA. They will So, which means that if you take something that's spiritual and you don't have a low frequency grounding for it, the spiritual will manifest as diabolical. The devil is a spiritual being. It's a manifestation of a perversion of the higher frequencies because they cannot ground. It is, if the divine is the ultimate of wisdom, the devil is the ultimate of insanity. Even though insanity many times passes off as wisdom, organizes itself, and can convince us by hook or by crook that it is the ultimate insanity. So what's going on right now is a general modification in the structure of the human collective, which is essentially representing the evolutionary blossoming of the situation right now. All of the issues are focused on the human species. If they were focused elsewhere, the planet would be going haywire right now. It is not. This cannot happen indefinitely. Seems to be it's temporary. But in terms of a human lifespan, it amounts to years and maybe decades. So there are adjustments, as the New Agers like to say, but this is an understatement. When you talk about adjustment, you really mean upheaval. What people perceive as earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanoes erupting, and things like that occur at the personal and collective levels as scary things and scary promises and scary future possibilities. And thus, we react to them, maybe without even completely realizing it, in the way that we react to earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanoes erupting, and the sky falling down. So these things, it helps, however, to keep the situation in perspective. That this is a good thing because we do not want the earth to crack open and swallow us whole. We do not want natural events we do not want acts of God. We want acts of humanity because we are human beings and we can have a say in there no matter what the matrix tells us. We do have a say in our way, in some way, if we can harness the situation for ourselves. And it is not an either-or thing. You don't not harness it or harness it. There is a spectrum. Everybody does what they can. And everything, whether somebody criticizes, bitches, is sold out, whatever, is part of the general pattern of this attempted harnessing by the species, including what the Illuminati is doing. It doesn't make them good people, but let's go deeper into this. Now, astrologically, aside from these eclipses that are going on, the cosmos is punctuating the situation. It is kind of organizing it. It's like setting the rhythm, and we're dancing to it. The melody is our own, however, and it may be discordant at this time, but we are still having a certain rhythm that helps us synchronize with each other, and this is where the cosmos comes in. That's its role. It is not an intervention of an authority that has to make everything right, because then we're going to turn into bitchy little children again, and I say again because this may be a repeating pattern over thousands of years or whatever. I've referenced Atlantis before, mythologically, not historically per se, but there's a possibility that it did exist. However, in the collective unconscious, there is a sense that somewhere a civilizational ideal existed. This ideal collapsed, and then from the ashes came out the, shall we say, tyrannical matrix that has evolved to what we know today. The astrological configuration is essentially a restrictive one, in the sense that it says the following. Look, there are forces at work. You can't afford to be distracted from prioritizing your own participation in these forces. If you will be distracted, you will feel caged in. You will feel like somebody is not letting you do what you want to do. You will feel overwhelmed, and you will feel terrified because you are like someone trying, you know, that game Operation where you try to take the little tweezers and you pull out the little body part, the little bone, and if you touch the sides, you hear the buzzer. And what if the buzzer was a shock that was, electrodes were connected to you, so if you hit the sides, you were going to get an electric shock. It's like that. You have to move and grasp the situation in a way that is resonant with what is going on, or you're going to get shocked by the friction. Things are basically going through critical evolutionary stages, spiritually, physically, emotionally, all of these things. This is pretty much obvious to anybody who, has their eyes open even a little bit. So when this happens, you don't, it's not about rocking the boat, but you want to do things in a careful and deliberate frame of being, and you want to prioritize, so you basically economize your energy to address what needs to be addressed and save your strength, because it is critical. Now, many people take this as a kind of, dire prophecy, something's going to happen, who knows, are you sure? No, this is adult talk. When you talk to children, that's how the mass media talks to us. They put things simply, and they put it in black and white, and they make it seem like the nanny state's going to take care of everything, or the king, or the authority, or the this and that. And then those who feel abused bitch at the king or the authority or whatever. And it's like, look, the only way to deal with a predator is to show them that you are not the prey. And by kicking and screaming, that is not the way. Dealing with your emotions and your shadow is one thing. That is part of the process and is part of being an adult. Trying to dump your emotional baggage on others so they can deal with it, and calling that honest expression, is something different. Being honest with yourself means not judging yourself, because that ain't going to help. It means being honest with yourself, and you're honest with yourself for a reason, in order to be able to make things better, to optimize the situation. Now, a lot of what's going on, let me get to the astrological thing really quick. Basically, there are four forces. If you imagine the astrological zodiac as a circle, it is, then these four planets are at the cardinal points. They're at different angles. One of them is very close to the galactic center. Another one is directly opposed to it. Another one is where the fall equinox is, or very close to it. Not even that close, but still along the lines. And then the other one is close to the spring equinox. This is a very major configuration. It pits the karmic challenge that tells us we need to be adults and open up to the transcendent with our natural desire to stabilize things right here in the immanent, right here at ground zero, to be able to be confident and to be able to deal with reality and prosper in it. But at the same time, to balance this with our karmic challenge. At the same time, we have these other arms of the cross, and one of them is the collective is being supercharged. It's being plugged into an accelerating energy that is freaking everything out, because we are still rusty pipes. We have not opened our energy channels. The energy is moving and clearing out emotions, and these emotions are not cleared out to leave us. They are cleared out to be digested and reabsorbed as energy we can use. On the other side of this is our desire to do something, to do specific things, and in the midst of this crazy feeling of chaos. And all of these things, if you focus on one end of the situation, one side of the cross, it's going to imbalance all the other ones. So everybody is now being challenged to balance out the critical reference points of necessary doing and being, shall we say. These 4 points: the hyper-energization of the collective, the need to do something specific, the karmic potential and challenge of our history, of our past, of our transcendent nature, and the practical need to be comfortable, to be confident, to move forward, to expand. As I said, even if you focus on one axis, on 2 of these things and balance them out, the other 2 are going to flip you over. So, or even if you focus on 3 and leave 1, that 1 is going to flip you over. And this leaves a narrow margin of action for each of us. We all feel restricted, and at the same time, as we go through this bottleneck, we will feel pressured. We will feel like people are forcing us to do whatever we don't want to do. But if you stand back, and not just stand back neutrally, but I mean if you can, without rejecting yourself, there is a point of being able to stabilize and access your adult self and say, look, this is really me who's pressuring me, not the higher self or whatever. But if I really knew what was going on and I had this view of what is needed to be done, then I wouldn't feel pressure. Again, we are like children. We have been kept in ignorance for so long that we are hurt and we don't know what to do with our hurt. When somebody is hurt, many times the first question they ask is why. And often that doesn't really help, but it can. So many of us have asked why, and some answers are starting to come. I'd like to provide my perspective regarding some of these answers. The best way to benefit from answers is to learn to read them, is to study them, is to meditate on them, and more importantly, to engage in pattern recognition with everything else you know. Not fact recognition so much, but patterns. For example, a political example. A couple of months ago, the Prime Minister of Turkey, basically, who's authoritarian, tyrannical, blah, 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 there was a scandal. Somebody tapped his phone, found out he was embezzling money, this, that, and the other. Now, this came along, at the tail end of the Turkish people basically revolted, and they're still in the streets and all of this, and he couldn't get it together. Then he got cancer, which is the same type of cancer that Chavez got, that the president of Argentina got, and he got well all of a sudden. These are patterns. You don't satisfy the status quo, you're going to get sick. Or you're going to get, a scandal will come up all of a sudden from the same media that represses everything. Now, the same thing now is happening in Greece. Something happened, a scandal popped up because of some leaked information. The same surveillance system that controls everything, so all of a sudden somebody, and kills anybody who says anything, all of a sudden leaks information. Oh, this popped up because, somebody noticed it, and it wasn't suppressed. Or it goes on YouTube and it's not shut down. So you start getting suspicious, but not suspicious to the point of jumping to a definite conclusion, but to the point of saying, okay, here's pattern A, here's pattern B. You look at your life and you notice similar patterns going on. What is the resonance of these patterns? What is the feeling behind it? How does that, you go back to, who would be in charge? What does that say about them? That's one level. That's just an example about an obvious, rational, political, socioeconomic, whatever level of things. But I'm challenging listeners to even go deeper than that. And I'll follow this with another example. I was reading the, History of Banking and Agent Perspective, with Gold of Solomon and all of that. There are some links on Ron's site, and he gave another link. Some of these links censor the information. It's even out on Amazon now, and I believe that document is destined to become very popular. It might go viral or not. My suggestion here is to study this document. It's a simple presentation. It's a slideshow, basically. It's not a complex text. It's written very simply. Now, I'm not saying this document is the truth or the ultimate truth. However, it puts a lot of the patterns of information together. It puts them together coherently. And there's a lot that it says that you need to look at it more than once in order for once again, we've been rudely cut off, but I think we can pick up where we left off. It's 8:22, and another temporal positive hint to keep going, as far as I'm concerned. So I was talking about the history of banking material. I found this on one link. It said it came from 2011. Maybe it was written around 2010. It may have been written by the SwissIndo people. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. What matters is that it is a presentation that is more or less impartial. and that it gives you an idea of where these people are coming from. Now, you need to understand and think deeply, in my opinion, if you want to really benefit from this, and look at the details. For example, it says that, okay, there was this breeding program, something you hear about in Alex Jones too. The guy says something similar, only he restricts it to the English and, colonial people. But a breeding program that tried to integrate all of the bloodlines of the various royalties to come up with one final outcome, a person basically that has all of the bloodlines, and so they can all trust this person. This alleged king of kings is essentially there because they won't have any interest, other than everyone's interest, because their blood is in that person. Guaranteed. They've kept tabs on them, and probably they have raised this person toward this end. So it's essentially a kind of diplomatic person, diplomatic breeding, or basically a human contract. Let's put it that way. If a contract could be a human being, and since a contract is essentially an agreement, this person is a manifestation of an agreement. So it's not some authority that's here to tell us what to do. It's a manifestation of an agreement between kings and queens. So that is what the title means to me. So when you reach that point, however, any children this person has who are not born of incest or some form of inbreeding with sisters or whatever, is going to not be at the peak. It's not going to be the son of the King of Kings is going to veer off because that king is going to have a child with a woman who's from a specific bloodline, and so there's going to be an emphasis of interest toward that person's mother, for example. So M1 is a position for life, and it's going to last for one lifetime. So beyond that M1, there are no M1s in terms of that specific definition of M1, monetary one, whatever. In my opinion, the way I read this, in accordance to what this contract or covenant or agreement was. This isn't obvious, however. You need to look at the situation deeper. You need to study it. It's not one of those things that you can look at a video with, magnificent music, loud music playing, and, the thing goes through and it won't sink in. Or even a video that's a kind of where you have somebody interviewing a person, and then you have in the background these words. You need to take this and focus on it in a quiet place when you have time, and to be able to use it as an example of cultivating discernment, as an exercise of cultivating discernment. If you're interested in these matters, if you have questions, and it's not about SwissIndo here. This is about the whole shebang as far as the conspiracy, Illuminati, elite, whatever is concerned. Even, to tell the truth, there is no historic evidence that any kind of Solomon existed. There's historic evidence that David and the line of David existed, but some people say Solomon was one of the pharaohs. Some people say that somebody else. It doesn't matter. What matters is the archetypal message, the archetypal potential of the story itself. Somebody had a lot of gold and a lot of power in the past. They moved to another place to save that gold, and that's where the money came from. The gold from ancient times. Where did the gold in Europe come from? Europe doesn't have any gold mines of that extent. It came from the New World. They took it. They plundered it. So a lot of people, a lot of natives in South America, I knew some people from Argentina, natives in South America are saying, give us our gold back. Is it ever going to happen? If it did, it would set the whole status quo on its head. Now, I'm not saying it shouldn't happen, but the whole thing is that things are very, very delicate. If we go back to the beginning of time and try to redress every single injustice that's been done, we're going to get nowhere, because it's not really the way it works, because we're not popping out from a vacuum. We're not souls coming out of a vacuum and then victimized and then wanting redress. There is a continuity of karma. This is the point where Spirituality is necessary to make sense of the nuances of the situation as well as the bigger picture. However, we have been snowed in our spirituality. Nobody's going to come and give it to us. Some people may suggest things, but you have no way of proving it. Thus, you are put in the place of an adult who needs to come to their own conclusions, and to be sure that their conclusions are their conclusions, not just some kind of, well, that works for me, let's go. You got to be sure, because there are consequences for everything now. I am not of the opinion that we've all made a mess and now we have to fix it. I am of the opinion that we are in a mess, and it might as well be us who are going to fix it, because expecting somebody else to fix it is going to lead you to a place of disappointment. It usually does. If you want something done, do it yourself, and if you do that, you're going to find allies at some point. You're going to find others of like mind. It may not be immediately, it may not be easily, but we are already observing it happening. Thus, that is a pattern. That kind of evolving situation of finding like-minded people is a pattern that has been repressed from the potential of our, because of the disappointments and the sabotages, but that pattern now is growing like a living organism, which means the possibilities of finding allies and helpers and people that we can work together with for a better tomorrow and a better today is coming into its own, but it's a process of growth, as Ron and others say. At the same time, sitting on my butt and waiting for the process to complete itself is a frustrating predicament. I don't want to sit on my butt, but I don't want to do the specific action that others tell me to do. I want to find my own action. Thus, we are challenged, and thus that's the way an adult thinks. That's the way an adult feels. An adult who also has a child within them and does not deny that child. Let's take all the cliches of the New Age and everything and sift through them and find out which of them really serve us, which of them are misunderstood, and which of them need to be thrown out. We're not in the dark. We're in a room full of a bunch of, junk that's really useful stuff that we have to sift through it. This is how our psyche is as well. We need to be careful of what some people try to reinforce in us, for better or for worse. Either way, whatever happens, it needs to be our choice. Now, the thing about the Illuminati is that they know all of this, but I do not believe they feel all of this. Some of them may, but their emphasis is always on knowledge, and that is not always a good thing. And I believe that for the most part, they suffer from the arrogance of believing it's a good thing, that you can't trust feelings because it's arbitrary. Yes, they tend to be arbitrary or seem that way to the intellect when they are not mature. When your feeling nature and your thinking nature are at odds, and your body nature is also at odds with this, then you have a mess, and the world becomes a mess. This is one of the things that is coming into its own that's being corrected. When the human being aligns their mind, their heart, and their body, and they work together as one, the world will become a paradise, because we will access the more than the sum of parts potentials of our being. This is what we are challenged to do. And this is also one of the ways we can look at the situation from a deeper perspective, to look at the fundamental essence of what's going on, as opposed to the surface effects that we think that if these are fixed, everything is going to be fine. Well, let me tell you, history says, and everything says, that you can fix the form of a situation, you can make all the laws you want, you can put all the right people in the right positions, and the next day you're going to have a problem worse than the one that you started out with. Because there is absolutely no way to guarantee a system without the fundamental essence of the situation being addressed and being transformed into a mature one. The founding fathers of the United States knew that. They said this is only temporary. Constitutions are not going to work forever. In fact, it's also a compromise. We're having a constitution, we've got slaves, women have no rights, and then you've got this British crown and these kings and everything that want to take over anyways. It's just a temporary measure. people treat it like it's permanent. So they want to put it back in, which is as a temporary measure, as if it's going to work. By itself, it's not going to work. So people need to understand, and this is what Ron calls the Eastern perspective, which I don't believe is Eastern. I just believe that it's been repressed in the West. That essentially a more spiritual perspective, but to look more deeply, to stop thinking that a law or a word or a technique is the answer. So we can sit back and the technique will take care of it. That's like asking for a surrogate parent. Not even a real parent, but a surrogate one, a robot parent. You know, the technique, the method, the system, the constitution, the law, all of these are surrogates of our own human discernment and our own human nature. We need a surrogate when we're immature, but a surrogate isn't a real parent even. We don't have those. Some people, I won't even say some of us, you know, that would even be pretentious. But because, you know, there's no way to talk to people unless you come to them as an equal. I don't care who you think you are. We have the right to believe who we think we have the right to think whatever we want of ourselves. But we are not lying when we're coming sincerely to other people and treat them as equals. I mean, when I say we, I mean anyone who wants to come and share something with another person. Now, this is, again, the point where the Illuminati veer off. And I say Illuminati as a general thing. Actually, it comes down to a kind of separation between what you might call an in-group of human beings who believe they are professionals of humanity and the rest of humanity, which they believe are amateurs or children. So this came from prehistoric times, maybe Atlantis, when you had some people, because evolution is not uniform. You do have some people opening their eyes before other people. We notice this today. It doesn't make them better. I am not better than somebody who's ignorant. I am just where they really need to be. They are the ones who are displaced, you might say. But still, we're all evolving, and that's the way it should be, because this allows a relativism of perspectives. If we were all in the same place, we would be blind to everything else. We would be blind to the next step. If we're all spread out, then we can have an example of what it was like to be asleep. We can have an example of what it was like to be partially awake. We can have an example of how it is to be awake as we are, and an example of what it's like to be even more awake. We need to observe all these things around us and not deify, idolize anything. Now, you look at this text and you notice certain things that most people probably will gloss over. Or they may say, I don't understand this. This doesn't make sense. And here's one point, and it's not the point that, you know, about bankers and what they're doing in the pyramids and blah, blah, blah. This is basically a detail where they say, look, there are Illuminati that are hardliners. These are the ones that want to kill us all. And then there are the softliners, he says, which I would call moderates. So you have these moderates that basically are nice Illuminati, and then the other ones that are essentially evil Illuminati. Good cops, bad cops. Good Illuminati, bad Illuminati. White hats, black hats, whatever. So look at these guys, and then the author tells us no matter what they are, white or black or whatever, bad or good, they all have the same things. They want to eradicate the Jews, he said, and everything they believe in. They believe the Aryans are the supreme race. They want to decrease the population from 7 billion to 1.5 or 1 billion. Lucifer is their god. The Garden of Eden wasn't what they said it was, and then one more. There are like 5 things in there that are interesting for me, because I believe, now you look at this, okay, some Indonesian guy, this is an Asian perspective, which means it's around Asian Illuminati and all of this are participating, Chinese. What the hell does that have to do with Jews and Aryans? So you look at the situation, the only way this makes sense is if Jews and Aryans is not really an exact term, it's a representative term for something more general that encompasses everybody. So if you look at it like that, however, it might make sense. Aryan means noble, okay? It means exceptional. It means flawless. However, originally the Sanskrit word Aryan means compatriot. It means we belong to the same secret society, the same in-group, the same village, the same tribe, as opposed to everybody else. Aryan means us and implies versus them. The them is Israel. Now, Ron synchronistically mentioned an interesting biblical parable, and I refer to Christianity again because Ron understands it and it creates a kind of resonance that might help the message come through better, since this is his medium, so to speak. But he mentioned the curing of a blind person by Jesus. And he says that the blind person the Bible says, wasn't cured in one go. There were two stages. Now, the first stage was when the blind person saw things blurry, or that's how he interpreted it. He said that, well, what do you see? Well, people are like trees walking. And then it says, oh, now I see clearly. That is one level of interpretation. Now, if you look at it from another level, which I'm encouraging, not the direct head-on rational, but the oblique reason, the off to the corner, out of the corner of your eye, out of the corner of your mind, out of your intuition, out of that, what makes the hairs in your neck move type of feeling, the feeling in your gut or in your heart, what creates a stirring somewhere, but you can't really put a finger on it. However, if you looked at esoteric symbolism, you'll see that trees are really pillars. They're spinal cords. It's the human, is the tree of life, is the human nervous system, the tree of knowledge. I mean, come on, the nervous system gives us our knowledge. So once we evolve a human nervous system, we have, and activating that tree bears fruit. Digesting that fruit, we awaken to the fact that we are actually discerning beings. Now, to sidestep a little bit here, the Hebrew word for good is also the word for good fortune, for things happening naturally. A healthy, natural thing that doesn't go against God. That's good. And it's not about authority, it just means being natural. Healthy, natural living, that's good. What's evil is not necessarily interpreted as we Westerners would interpret. In Hebrew, evil can also be chaos, which means, or basically somebody coming in and messing up your natural status quo. No change is good change, basically. God has a plan, everything's going well, then some asshole comes in and tries to change it. It doesn't matter if it's a better plan. Chances are they're going to fuck it up. So, anything that messes up the status quo, human intervention, or anything but natural, divine process is considered evil. So, discerning the tree of knowledge basically discerns between tov, which is good, the Hebrew word for good, and ra, which is the Hebrew word for evil. And it basically, in English for me, it would mean between nature and artifice, between the way the world is and the way humans can make it, between the status quo of where humans find themselves in the Garden of Eden and how they can change that status quo. Basically, humans discovered that we don't have to be this way. Perfect or not, we can explore other options. This is what the proverbial gods didn't want. This is our nervous system. Repressing our nervous system basically represses this ability. This is why there is so much scientific repression of the human nervous system. Chemical, biological, electromagnetic, especially the latter. You've got fucking 60 hertz going all over the planet. I mean, in 1 minute, you have 60 pulses of an electric field that hammer your nervous system down to a pulp, so you're tensed up. I mean, somebody once said, well, if you turn off the electricity all over the place, over a wide area, and there's no fields that are artificial or 60 hertz, your muscles will start feeling relaxed. You'll be able to breathe easier. You'll start becoming more intuitive. And you will feel more afraid because all of that's been repressed is going to come to the surface. So eventually, yes, new energy systems are going to lead us there. And that's why they're being emphasized. There's a spiritual or evolutionary purpose to that. Now, as I was saying, however, people are trees. So if you look at this healing of this blind person by Jesus, excuse me, he opened his eyes and he started viewing things in a spiritual manner. He started viewing people as trees. He wasn't completely awake. He was in that position between rational matrix vision, where everything is sharp and clear and defined in a matrix manner, and complete blindness. And in that twilight zone, he was able to discern a certain esoteric truth, that human beings are walking trees. They're like trees channeling heaven and earth. This is the meaning of Israel. Israel, Yisrael. Now there's contention because it's pronounced Z or S and not Sh, the Shin, the letter there. But essentially, if you take the pictographic letters at face value, it means upright people, divine upright people, the upright people of Elohim. Translated as God, but Elohim is a more general term. It's not specifically Jehovah. It's a term meaning the evolutionary authority, the forces behind the full creational evolutionary blossoming, outflowing. So these people are the trees, the pillars of heaven and earth. So what does the in-group want to do? They have separated themselves. It doesn't mean that they're not pillars. They have separated themselves and they have defined themselves as an in-group that wants to destroy the connections of heaven and earth of everybody else because they want to maintain their special position. It doesn't matter if they're moderates or if they're conservatives. Even if they believe that this is wrong, that inkling, they still have to karmically deal with that fear. It's there. It's in the collective. Anybody can sense it. And even if they've dealt with it personally, they will have to deal with it as a projection from all their other Illuminati friends and compatriots. Conservative, liberal, moderate, hardcore, whatever. It's there. So because of this, these two things, the Aryan and the Israelite dichotomy, which existed or came up during Atlantis or existed since then, essentially, or in some prehistoric time, they want to diminish the population. Because when you have 7 billion people channeling heaven and earth or being pressured now with the underworlds to open up, it's going to lead to a situation that terrifies them. Their intellect cannot handle it. The gods that they call spirit or God, and it says in that text. Now, don't think that the guy at the top of a pyramid is connected to God, that all these people who are in pinnacle positions or are connected to the same spirit. One man's interpretation is Jesus, another man's is Lucifer, another woman's is Diana, etc., etc., etc. There's a whole spectrum of connections, and usually these emanate from the individual predisposition of the person. So it's a solidified concept of the divine, even though it seems transcendent. So the people of Israel view God in a different manner than the Aryan people do. The Aryan people are the 1%, not in terms of money or in terms of psychopathy or evil or whatever, but in terms of a certain tradition of esoteric development that wasn't repressed. They still represent a faction of that tradition because back in the day when the concept arose, things were different. So this is a faction of another faction that had evolved before everybody else, and now they have become corrupted and degraded because they didn't do what they were supposed to do. They didn't return the evolutionary potential and let all of humanity open up because they're scared of because it's unpredictable. Nobody knows what the fuck's going to happen. We think it's going to be a good thing and we tell ourselves, but we're not dealing with our fear about it. So we can lighten the load of all of these people and the craziness. And this is part of what's going on that's why facing the shadow. Part of the shadow is fearing success, fearing paradise, fearing what's going to happen when we become responsible existential adults in the world who don't have to rely on money, rules, and laws. I mean, look, all these people who say get rid of money, are they really facing the implications of what that means? Make a prayer. Say, I want to face the implications of what that means, of what human adulthood means. And notice, see, when I have these conversations with anybody, the background noise in this place increases. The very energy of these prospects of our adulthood scares the shit out of us at a level that most of us doesn't even admit exists. We think we're afraid for other reasons. But let me tell you, the Illuminati do not want us. Some of them do, because they feel there's no other way. But deep down, they're afraid of us facing these fears, because that means they're going to have to face things they may not know exist in them. So all of us are connected in this sense. And we know that what spirituality means and what natural evolution and human awareness and potential means is connection, interconnection, inter-responsibility, inter-opportunity. All of these things that we can do, it's not about doing them together, but we cannot separate ourselves from each other as these things happen. You can be isolated, not isolated, but somewhere where you're not immediately dealing with other people. And you can still be connected with them and feel that connection and affect them as they can affect you. So I'm saying in these examples, and we have one more problem here with the text, and it's not a problem, it's just a point that needs a lot of examination. How do you reduce 7 billion people to 1 billion people without killing anybody? Or without placing rules and telling people, well, you can't have kids, you know? Or without taking them off the planet, possibly forcibly, and putting them on another planet. You know, what, the fifth dimension? Let's leave the fifth dimension as a different place and time out of this for now. But in the practical sense, that if you're going to reduce the population, it's going to take a lot of time. That is going to take generations, because people are still going to have kids. So if they start changing and realizing, for example, the Pleiadian books said that, well, you know, the female metabolism can change, so a woman is fertile only once a year along a solar cycle instead of once a month. And so that's going to help the human population to go down. People are going to live longer, so you can have one kid every 200 years, or one kid in 200 years, and, you know, that's going to diminish the population. But it's going to take a long time, which means that the argument that says that the Earth is not sustainable is either false, or it completely justifies some radical action that's going to really step on a lot of toes. So, in my opinion, we need to look at these things. I don't believe that our population is too heavy. What I believe is that somebody is freaked out at 7 billion people waking up, or anything more than even 1 billion people, because the fact is that if you have 1 billion people, you can manage them. Even if you're benign, a good shepherd, an enlightened ruler, you can manage them a lot easier than 7 billion people. These issues are coming up, and we need to call ourselves on the carpet first before we call anybody else on the carpet. But it doesn't mean that we don't have the right to call anybody else on the carpet. We just are better served to do it from a position of more mature capacity. Not in some, don't take this in a derogatory, insulting, or whatever, looking down upon sense. I'm talking about having better resources, better discernment, and that some challengers have talked about training. That's the training, and nobody's going to give it to you. You're not going to go to school for this, you know. It's going to be obvious, because it's not the type of thing anybody can really tell you you have to do it. And I'm not telling you have to do it. People have shown interest, and I'm suggesting, hey, examine these things. Think about it. Food for thought. Food for thought. It may sit in your stomach a little bit, you know, but still, have patience. So we do have an opportunity with this text, in my opinion, to read between the lines, to examine certain details, to explore, to research, to intuit, to recognize the patterns connected to other things, all these things, and apply everything that we've been challenged to really get into in some way without maybe even realizing. But, and again, it's my honest opinion, but I stand by it because I've had results for myself. I've looked at this text and I've realized that, oh, you know, these people do see us as lab rats, but they don't think it's bad. In fact, they can, many of them are not psychopaths, but they have a certain mindset of being able to integrate. That's not necessarily a healthy thing, but to be dispassionate, to be exactly how many New Agers say, to be neutral. But then again, it's very easy to be in denial when you're neutral. And again, I'm not speaking SwissIndo and all those things specifically. I'm speaking about what this text is saying. So I encourage you to examine it, to not just read it once, but to look at it, to notice where it resonates, to notice where it seems really off, and to not let that go before you go and really start bitching at anybody or present arguments and this and that and the other. It's best to partake in our own counsel and whatever else we believe is partaking with our own counsel in order to do this. And I will, I am now concluding my talk. I've said all I have to say today. I hope it's been a total of an hour, I think, but it's in 2 separate videos, so I hope, if it tires people out, they can just shut one off. And that's the good thing about videos. But I'll stop talking now. Thank you, Ron, for having me this weekend.
Thank you, Aristo. Yeah, I'm going to try to put it together in one video. We'll see how it goes.
Okay. Till next time, Ron.
All right. Namaste.
Namaste.